Welcome, weary traveler, to a quiet journey back in time. Tonight, we'll gently explore the often overlooked, yet deeply significant, world of women in medieval Europe. This isn't a tale of grand spectacles or dramatic conflicts, but rather a soft exploration of their everyday lives, their quiet strengths, and the subtle ways they shape their world. From the humblest cottage to the grandest castle, we'll drift through peaceful homes, quiet cloisters, and bustling markets, observing the gentle rhythms of their days and the enduring spirit that guided them. You don't need to remember every detail. Just let the quiet rhythm of this story wash over you, a soothing whisper from the past, inviting you to simply listen and to slowly drift into a peaceful slumber. Perhaps you'll find comfort in the gentle cadence of history as we explore how the lives of women, though often hidden from the prominent narratives, were in fact the very fabric upon which much of medieval Europe was woven. Their roles were diverse, their contributions essential, and their quiet resilience often remarkable. Picture, if you will, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating stone walls, the gentle whisper of fabric against fabric as a woman moves through her daily tasks, the quiet hum of a spinning wheel turning endlessly in a peaceful cottage. These are the sounds and images that will guide us tonight, not the clash of swords or the thunder of hooves, but the gentle, persistent rhythms of life itself. We'll delve into the various spheres where they lived, worked, and found contentment, from managing households to practicing quiet crafts, from raising families to finding solace in faith. Each chapter will unfold like a gentle wave, carrying you deeper into relaxation, deeper into the peaceful world of these remarkable women who lived centuries ago. Their stories are not filled with dramatic upheavals, but with the steady, comforting patterns of daily life. The kneading of bread in the early morning light, the careful tending of herb gardens, the soft lullabies sung to children, the quiet prayers whispered in chapel corners. These are the moments that define their existence, and these are the moments that will help guide you toward rest. So, let your mind unwind, your breath deepen, and allow yourself to sink into the quiet comfort of your bed. Feel the weight of the day slowly lifting from your shoulders as we prepare to step back through time. We'll begin by setting the scene, understanding the general expectations and societal landscape that subtly shaped a woman's journey in this distant past. Just relax and let the story unfold. Let the gentle voices of history carry you away from the concerns of today, into a world where time moved more slowly, where the pace of life was measured not in minutes and hours, but in seasons and years, in the gentle cycles of birth and growth, work and rest. Take a deep breath, settle into your pillow, and allow yourself to be transported to a time when the world was quieter, simpler, and filled with the gentle wisdom of women who found meaning in the smallest moments of their daily lives. Imagine now the soft glow of candlelight illuminating a quiet gathering, perhaps for a gentle union of two families. The light flickers gently across the faces of those assembled, casting warm shadows on stone walls adorned with simple tapestries. For women in medieval Europe, marriage was a significant, yet often quiet, turning point, leading them into the heart of household management and the gentle rhythms of domestic life. The path to marriage was usually paved with careful consideration and gentle negotiations between families. Picture the quiet conversations that took place in the evenings, when parents would discuss their daughter's future with the wisdom that comes from years of experience. These were not harsh business transactions, but thoughtful deliberations about compatibility, mutual respect, and the promise of a peaceful life together. The young woman herself, now in her teens or early 20s, would often have met her intended husband several times before the wedding. Their courtship was gentle and respectful, conducted under the watchful but kind eyes of their families. They would speak softly together, perhaps walking in the garden while her mother worked nearby, or sitting together during family meals, learning each other's temperament and disposition. The wedding itself was a celebration of community and continuity. Picture the simple ceremony, perhaps held in the local church, with the gentle sound of voices raised in prayer and blessing. The bride wore her finest gown, often made by her own hands or those of her mother and sisters, decorated with careful embroidery that spoke of love and hope for the future. After the ceremony, there would be feasting and gentle celebration. The community would gather to offer their blessings and good wishes, sharing food and stories that welcomed the new couple into their proper place in society. The celebration was warm but not raucous, marked by the gentle joy of families coming together. Then came the quiet transition to her new home. Whether she moved to her husband's family cottage or to a manor house, the young bride would begin to learn the specific rhythms and requirements of her new household. This was not always easy, as every family had its own ways of doing things, its own traditions and expectations. But medieval women were well prepared for this transition. They had learned from childhood to be observant, to adapt, to find their place within the existing order of things. The new bride would watch carefully, learning how her mother-in-law preferred the bread to be baked, how the household goods were organized, how the daily routines were managed. Within the comforting walls of their homes, women held a quiet, steady power. The household was their domain, and their husband's success often depended on their ability to manage it well. This was not a burden, but a source of pride and purpose. The medieval woman understood that her role was essential to the family's prosperity and happiness. Let's drift now into the intricate details of their domestic duties, from the gentle care of a hearth to the management of their small domains. Picture the morning routine as the household awakens. The wife rises early, often before dawn, to rekindle the fire that is the heart of the home. She moves quietly so as not to wake the others, her hands skilled from years of practice. She begins by preparing the morning meal, perhaps porridge made from oats or barley, bread left over from the previous day's baking, and ale or milk to drink. The kitchen is her sanctuary, where she creates the nourishment that sustains her family. Every task is done with care and attention, from the grinding of grain to the careful measurement of ingredients. The management of food was one of her most important responsibilities. She needed to know how much grain to store for the winter, how to preserve meat and vegetables, how to make the most of every ingredient. Nothing was wasted in the medieval household, and a wife's skill in stretching resources could mean the difference between comfort and hardship for her family. She also managed the household's textile production. This included spinning thread from wool or flax, weaving cloth, and sewing garments for the family. Picture her sitting by the window in the afternoon light, her hands moving steadily as she spins, the wheel turning in a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. This was not just practical work, but a source of meditation and peace. The care of children was, naturally, a central part of her daily life. Medieval women typically had many children, and the household was always filled with the gentle sounds of young voices. She taught her daughters the same skills she had learned as a child, guiding their small hands as they learned to sew, cook, and manage household tasks. Her sons, too, received her guidance in their early years. She taught them their prayers, their basic manners, and the fundamental values that would guide them throughout their lives. The bond between mother and child was strong and lasting, built through countless hours of gentle instruction and patient care. The medieval wife also served as the family's primary healthcare provider. She knew which herbs could treat a fever, which poultices could heal a wound, which teas could ease a troubled stomach. Her knowledge was passed down from her mother and grandmother, a precious inheritance of practical wisdom. She managed the household's relationships with the outside world. When merchants came to the door, she would negotiate for the best prices on goods the family needed. When neighbors needed help, she would organize the household's contribution. When the priest came to visit, she would ensure that the family's spiritual needs were properly attended to. The evening brought its own gentle rhythms. After the day's work was done, the family would gather around the fire for the evening meal. This was a time for quiet conversation, for sharing the events of the day, for strengthening the bonds that held the family together. The wife would often use this time to work on her sewing or spinning, her hands busy while her mind attended to the conversations around her. At night, as the household settled into sleep, she would make her final rounds, checking that the fire was safely banked, that the children were tucked in warmly, that all was secure for the night. Only then would she allow herself to rest, knowing that she had fulfilled her duties as wife, mother, and mistress of the household. The medieval marriage was built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. While the husband might be the public face of the family, the wife was its quiet strength, the one who ensured that daily life ran smoothly and peacefully. Her influence extended far beyond the walls of her home, shaping the character of her children and the well-being of her community. Beyond the comforting walls of their homes, many women also contributed to the family's quiet livelihood in various ways. Some took in sewing or spinning work from other households. Others sold eggs, cheese, or vegetables from their gardens. Still others brewed ale or baked bread for sale to their neighbors. Let's softly explore now their gentle participation in the world of work and trade, as we move from the intimate sphere of the household to the wider community where these remarkable women play. From the quiet crackle of a morning fire to the gentle setting of the evening meal, the medieval woman was truly the mistress of her hearth. Imagine her quiet competence, her hands busy with the gentle tasks that sustained her family and home in medieval Europe. Picture the soft rhythm of her daily life, as predictable and comforting as the rising and setting of the sun, yet filled with countless small decisions and gentle acts of care that wove together the very fabric of medieval domestic life. The day begins before dawn, in the quiet hours when the world still sleeps. She rises silently from her bed, careful not to disturb her husband and children who rest peacefully beside her. The house is cool and still, filled with the gentle breathing of her sleeping family. Her bare feet touch the cold stone floor, and she wraps a simple woolen shawl around her shoulders as she makes her way to the hearth. The fire has burned low during the night, reduced to glowing embers that pulse gently in the darkness. She kneels before the hearth, her movements practiced and sure, adding kindling with careful precision. She blows softly on the embers, coaxing them back to life, watching as the flames dance upward, casting flickering shadows on the walls and filling the room with warmth and light. This daily renewal of fire is almost sacred to her, for she knows that the hearth is truly the heart of her home. As the fire catches and grows stronger, she begins to prepare the morning meal. The kitchen is her domain, and every corner of it holds tools and ingredients that she knows intimately. She moves through this space with quiet confidence, her hands finding what they need without conscious thought. The wooden bowls, the iron pots, the grinding stones, all of these are extensions of herself, tools that help her transform simple ingredients into nourishment for her family. She begins by preparing the porridge that will sustain them through the morning hours. The oats or barley have been soaking overnight in a clay pot, softening in the cool water. She pours this mixture into her largest iron cauldron, adding milk from their cow or goat, a precious pinch of salt, and perhaps a small amount of honey if the family has been fortunate enough to acquire some from a local beekeeper. As the porridge begins to simmer over the fire, she turns her attention to the bread. Medieval families typically bake their bread only once or twice a week, so there may be loaves remaining from the previous baking day. She examines them carefully, her experienced hands testing their freshness. If the bread has grown hard, she will soak it in milk or broth to soften it, wasting nothing. The gentle bubbling of the porridge provides a soothing soundtrack as she continues her morning preparations. She might slice some preserved meat, perhaps bacon that has been carefully cured and smoked, or dried beef that was prepared during the autumn slaughter. These thin slices will add substance and flavor to the morning meal, providing the strength her family needs for the day's work ahead. The preparation of the morning drink requires its own careful attention. In most medieval households, ale was the standard beverage, as water was often unsafe to drink. She checks the supply in the wooden barrels that line one wall of the kitchen, tasting it carefully to ensure it has not gone sour. If she detects any hint of spoilage, she will strain the ale through clean linen, removing any sediment that might have formed. As the household begins to stir, she hears the gentle sounds of her family awakening. Her children's voices mix with her husband's deeper tones as they discuss the day ahead. She calls them to the table with a soft voice, inviting them to share in the meal she has prepared with such care. After the morning meal, the real work of the day begins. The household routine varies with the seasons, but certain tasks remain constant throughout the year. The fire must be maintained, fed with wood or peat to keep it burning steadily. The animals must be tended, chickens fed and their nests checked for eggs, cows or goats milked, pigs given their daily portion of kitchen scraps and grain. The preparation of the midday meal begins almost as soon as the morning dishes are cleared away. She plans her cooking carefully, considering what ingredients she has available, what the weather is like, and what kind of work her family will be doing. If it is a day of heavy labor in the fields, she will prepare something hearty and filling. If it is a day of lighter tasks, a simple soup or stew might suffice. Her kitchen garden requires daily attention throughout the growing season. She steps outside into the fresh air, her wooden basket in hand, to check on the vegetables and herbs that provide both food and medicine for her family. The onions and leeks need weeding, their green shoots pushing up through the dark soil. The beans climb their wooden supports, requiring gentle guidance to keep them growing in the right direction. She knows each plant in her garden intimately, understanding its needs and its gifts. The parsley and sage, the thyme and rosemary. These herbs will flavor her cooking and provide remedies for common ailments. The cabbage and turnips will store well through the winter months. The peas and beans can be dried and preserved, providing protein when fresh meat is scarce. The care of textiles occupies a significant portion of her day. Medieval families depended on homemade cloth for almost all their clothing and household linens. She sits by the window where the light is best, her spinning wheel beside her, transforming raw wool or flax in a thread with steady, rhythmic motions. The wheel turns with a gentle whir, and her fingers guide the fibers with practiced skill, creating thread that is neither too thick nor too thin. When she has accumulated enough thread, she will turn to her loom, weaving the threads into cloth. This is patient work, requiring concentration and skill. Each pass of the shuttle through the warp creates another row, and slowly the fabric grows under her hands. The rhythm of weaving is meditative, allowing her mind to wander while her hands work automatically. The mending of clothes is an ongoing task in every medieval household. Garments are precious and must be made to last as long as possible. She examines each piece carefully, her needle and thread ready to repair small tears before they become large holes. A patch sewn with care and skill can extend the life of a garment by many months or even years. The afternoon brings its own set of responsibilities. If it is washing day, she will heat large cauldrons of water over the fire, adding the clothes and linens that need cleaning. She uses soap made from animal fat and wood ash, scrubbing each piece clean with strong arms and patient attention to detail. The clean clothes are wrung out carefully and hung to dry, either outside in the sun and wind or inside by the fire if the weather is poor. Food preservation is another constant concern. During the growing season, she must think ahead to the long winter months when fresh food will be scarce. Vegetables are dried, pickled, or stored in cool cellars. Fruits are made into preserves or dried for winter use. Meat is salted, smoked, or preserved in fat to prevent spoilage. She prepares the evening meal with the same care she brought to the morning and midday meals. The family gathers around the table as the sun sets, sharing not just food, but conversation about the day's events. She listens to her husband's reports from the fields or his trade, her children's accounts of their lessons and play. These moments of quiet connection are as important to her as any of her practical tasks. After the evening meal, there are still tasks to be completed. The dishes must be washed and put away, the kitchen cleaned and organized for the next day. She checks on the animals one final time, ensuring they have sufficient food and water for the night. The fire is banked carefully, arranged so that it will burn slowly through the night without risk of spreading beyond the hearth. As the household settles into sleep, she takes a few moments to prepare for the next day. She sets out the ingredients for the morning meal, checks her supplies to see what might be running low, and mentally reviews the tasks that await her. This quiet planning ensures that each day will flow smoothly into the next, that her family's needs will be anticipated and met with her characteristic gentle efficiency. The seasonal rhythms add variety to these daily routines. Spring brings the joy of fresh eggs from hens that have begun laying again, the first tender greens from the garden, the arrival of new lambs and calves. Summer means long days of intense activity, preserving the abundance of the garden, helping with the grain harvest, preparing for the leaner months ahead. Autumn is perhaps the busiest time of all, as the final preparations for winter must be completed. The last vegetables are harvested and stored, the animals are slaughtered, and the meat preserved. The final brewing of ale is completed. Winter brings a different pace, with more time for indoor tasks like spinning and sewing, but also the challenge of making stored supplies last until spring returns. Through all these seasonal changes, the medieval woman remains the steady center of her household, the one whose quiet competence ensures that life continues smoothly and peacefully. Her work is never finished, but it is deeply satisfying, for she knows that every task she completes contributes to the well-being and happiness of those she loves most. Beyond the comforting walls of their homes, many women also contributed to the family's quiet livelihood in various ways. Some took on additional work to supplement the household income, while others found ways to use their domestic skills to serve their broader community. Let's softly explore now their gentle participation in the world of work and trade, as we discover how these remarkable women extended their influence beyond the walls of their own homes. Imagine the sun warming the quiet fields, casting long golden shadows across the countryside, or the gentle hum of a spinning wheel echoing through a peaceful cottage. For peasant women in medieval Europe, life was intimately connected to labor, their gentle hands tirelessly contributing to the family's survival and well-being. Picture these remarkable women, their days filled with work that was both demanding and deeply meaningful, as they helped sustain not just their own families, but the entire fabric of medieval society. The peasant woman's relationship with the land was profound and personal. She understood the soil beneath her feet as intimately as she knew her own children, recognizing the subtle signs that indicated when to plant, when to harvest, when to let fields rest. Her knowledge came not from books or formal education, but from years of careful observation and the wisdom passed down through generations of women who had worked these same fields before her. In the early spring, as the last frost melted from the ground, she would join her husband and children in preparing the field for planting. Her role was not merely supportive, but essential. While her husband might guide the plow, she followed behind, her keen eyes watching for stones that needed to be removed, her hands carefully placing seeds in the freshly turned earth. She understood the proper spacing, the correct depth, the gentle pressure needed to give each seed its best chance of growing into a healthy plant. The sowing of flax was often considered women's work, and she approached this task with particular care. Flax would provide the family with linen, and the quality of the final cloth depended greatly on how well the seeds were planted and tended. She scattered the tiny seeds with practiced movements, her hand releasing them in a gentle arc that ensured even distribution across the prepared ground. After sowing, she would rake the earth lightly, covering the seeds just enough to protect them while still allowing them to reach toward the sun. Throughout the growing season, the fields required constant attention. Weeds had to be removed before they could compete with the crops for nutrients and water. The peasant woman would spend long hours bent over the growing plants, her fingers carefully distinguishing between the vegetables she wanted to keep and the weeds that threatened them. This work required patience and skill, as pulling too aggressively could damage the tender roots of the crops. The care of the family's livestock was another realm where women's gentle touch proved invaluable. She rose before dawn to milk the cows, her hands moving in a steady rhythm as streams of warm milk filled the wooden bucket. The cows knew her well, responding to her soft voice and gentle approach. She understood each animal's temperament, knowing which ones needed patient coaxing and which would stand quietly for milking. The chickens were often considered her special responsibility. She scattered grain for them each morning, watching their behavior carefully for signs of illness or distress. Her experience, I could spot a sick bird immediately, and she knew which herbs and treatments could restore it to health. The collection of eggs was a daily treasure hunt, as she searched the nests and hiding places where the hens might have laid their precious contributions to the family's nutrition. Pigs, though perhaps less appealing to modern sensibilities, were incredibly valuable to the medieval peasant family, and their care often fell to the women of the household. She prepared their daily meals from kitchen scraps, garden waste, and whatever grain could be spared. She understood the importance of keeping them healthy and well-fed, knowing that a thriving pig could provide meat, fat for cooking and soap making, and even leather for various household uses. The goats, if the family kept them, required their own special attention. These intelligent and sometimes mischievous animals needed to be watched carefully to prevent them from escaping and damaging neighboring crops. The peasant woman would often take them to graze in areas where their browsing would actually be helpful, such as overgrown patches that needed clearing. The milk from goats was particularly valuable, as it could be made into cheese that would keep much longer than fresh milk. The harvest season brought its own intense rhythms of work. The peasant woman would join the entire family in the fields, working from dawn to dusk to bring in the crops before weather could damage them. She moved through the grain fields with a sickle, cutting the stalks close to the ground with smooth, efficient strokes. Her movements were graceful despite the repetitive nature of the work, developed through years of practice. After the grain was cut, it had to be gathered into bundles and transported to the threshing floor. She would tie the stalks in neat sheaves, her hands working quickly and efficiently. The proper binding of sheaves was crucial. Too loose and the grain would scatter and be lost. Too tight and the stalks might break. She had learned the perfect tension through years of experience. The threshing of grain was often a community activity, with several families working together to separate the precious kernels from their stalks. The peasant woman would wield a flail with practiced skill, striking the grain with just the right amount of force to release the seeds without damaging them. The rhythmic sound of multiple flails working in unison created a gentle percussion that accompanied this vital work. Winnowing, the process of separating grain from chaff, required a particularly delicate touch. The peasant woman would pour the threshed grain from a basket, allowing the wind to carry away the lighter chaff, while the heavier grain fell into a container below. She had to judge the wind direction and strength perfectly, adjusting her movements to ensure that as much grain as possible was saved while the unwanted material was blown away. The preparation of flax into linen was a long and complex process that occupied much of the peasant woman's time throughout the year. After the flax was harvested, it had to be wet, soaked in water until the woody stems began to decompose. She would check the progress daily, her nose telling her when the process was complete. The smell was not pleasant, but she endured it knowing that properly wet flax would produce the finest linen. The breaking and scutching of flax required both strength and delicate control. She would place the wet flax stalks on a wooden board and break them with a wooden blade, crushing the woody parts while preserving the valuable fibers. This was followed by scutching, using a knife-like tool to scrape away the broken wood and leave only the long, smooth fibers that would become thread. The final preparation of flax involved heckling, combing the fibers through increasingly fine metal combs to separate and align them. This was precise work that required patience and skill. The peasant woman would work steadily, her hands moving rhythmically as she drew the flax through the combs, creating bundles of fiber that were ready for spinning. Spinning occupied countless hours of the peasant woman's life. Whether working with wool from the family's sheep or flax from their fields, she would sit by the fire in the evening or by the window during the day, her wool turning steadily as she transformed raw materials into thread. The quality of her spinning would determine the quality of the finished cloth, so she took great pride in creating thread that was strong, even, and smooth. The dyeing of cloth and yarn was another skill that many peasant women mastered. She would gather plants, roots, and bark that could provide color. Madder for red, weld for yellow, wode for blue. The process required careful timing and temperature control as she heated the dye baths and monitored the gradual transformation of her materials from their natural colors to the desired hues. Beer brewing was often considered women's work, and the peasant woman would take pride in producing ale that was both nutritious and flavorful. She would carefully monitor the fermentation process, tasting and adjusting until the flavor was just right. Good ale was essential for the family's health, as it was often safer to drink than water, and her skill in brewing could mean the difference between wellness and illness for her loved ones. The preservation of food for winter required extensive knowledge and careful timing. She would dry vegetables and fruits, salt meat, and prepare various fermented foods that would provide nutrition during the lean months. Her success in these endeavors could literally mean the difference between life and death for her family during harsh winters. Many peasant women also contributed to the family income through specialized skills. Some became known for their particularly fine spinning or weaving, taking on work from other families. Others developed reputations as skilled brewers, healers, or food preparers. These additional sources of income were often crucial for the family's survival and prosperity. The peasant woman's work was never truly finished. Each season brought its own demands, and each day required attention to countless details. Yet there was a deep satisfaction in this work, a connection to the eternal rhythms of nature and the fundamental needs of human life. Her labor was not just about survival, but about creating abundance, beauty, and comfort for those she loved. As peasant women quietly tilled the earth and spun their threads, noble women, too, had their own distinct, yet equally gentle, roles and responsibilities. While the settings were different and the specific tasks varied, the fundamental dedication to family and community remained constant across all levels of medieval society. Let's drift now to the tranquil world of the castle and the quiet duties of its ladies, where we will discover how women of higher social standing contributed their own essential gifts to the tapestry of medieval life. Beyond the humble cottage, within the quiet stone walls of a medieval castle, resided noble women, whose lives, though grander in setting, were also shaped by gentle duties and quiet influence. Imagine the soft rustle of their gowns as they moved gracefully through their domains in medieval Europe, their days filled not with leisure, but with the complex responsibilities of managing large households, overseeing vast estates, and maintaining the delicate web of relationships that held medieval society together. Picture the noble woman awakening in her private chamber, high in the castle tower, as the first light of dawn filters through the narrow windows. Her room is furnished with luxuries unknown to peasant families. A proper bed with carved wooden frame and soft mattresses, tapestries hanging on the stone walls to provide warmth and beauty, chests filled with fine clothing and precious possessions. Yet despite these comforts, her day will be filled with duties and responsibilities that require the same dedication and skill as any peasant woman's labor. Her morning begins with prayer, kneeling before a small altar in her chamber or in the castle's chapel. The quiet moments of devotion center her thoughts and prepare her spirit for the day ahead. Her prayers include not only requests for divine guidance in her personal life, but also petitions for the welfare of all those under her care. The servants in the castle, the peasants on the estate, her husband's political allies, and her own children who may be fostered in other noble households. After her morning devotions, she begins the process of dressing, a ritual that reflects both her social position and the practical needs of her role. Her clothing is made from the finest materials available, silk imported from distant lands, wool woven from the fleeces of the best sheep, linen bleached to perfect whiteness. Yet these garments are not merely for display. They communicate her status and authority to all who see her, reinforcing the social order that depends upon clear distinctions between different ranks of society. The first major task of her day involves overseeing the castle's household management. While peasant women manage families of perhaps 6 to 10 people, the noblewoman's household might include dozens or even hundreds of individuals, knights and men-at-arms, servants and craftspeople, visiting nobles and their retinues, religious advisors, and various specialists whose skills were needed for the castle's operation. She begins by meeting with the castle's steward, reviewing the accounts, and discussing the day's priorities. Her understanding of household management must be comprehensive and detailed. She needs to know how much grain is stored in the castle's granaries, how many barrels of ale remain in the cellars, whether the salt supply is sufficient for preserving meat, and when the next shipment of luxury goods is expected from distant markets. The feeding of such a large household requires careful planning and constant attention. The noblewoman must ensure that meals are prepared not only for the family and their guests, but also for all the servants and workers who depend upon the castle for their sustenance. The main hall of the castle serves as a dining room where elaborate feasts demonstrate the family's wealth and hospitality, But the kitchens must also produce simpler fare for the many people whose labor keeps the castle functioning. She works closely with the castle's cook, planning menus that balance nutritional needs with social expectations. When important guests are expected, she must ensure that the meals served will reflect appropriately on the family's status and resources. This might mean ordering special delicacies, arranging for the finest wines, and coordinating elaborate presentations that will impress visitors and strengthen political alliances. The noblewoman's role extends far beyond the castle walls to encompass the management of the family's estates. While her husband might be away on military campaigns, attending the royal court, or managing other political affairs, she often serves as the practical administrator of their lands. This responsibility requires a deep understanding of agriculture, animal husbandry, and the complex relationships between the noble family and the peasants who work their fields. She must understand the agricultural cycle as thoroughly as any peasant woman, knowing when different crops should be planted and harvested, how much seed grain must be reserved for the following year, and what portion of the harvest can be taken as rent from tenant farmers. Her decisions about land use and agricultural practices directly affect the welfare of hundreds of families who live and work on the estate. The collection of rents and fees from peasant families requires both firmness and compassion. The noblewoman must ensure that the family receives the income necessary to maintain their social position and meet their obligations to the king, while also considering the genuine hardships that might prevent peasant families from paying what they owe. Her judgment in these matters can mean the difference between prosperity and poverty for many people. Legal matters also fall within her sphere of responsibility. Many noblewomen held the right to preside over local courts, hearing disputes between peasants, resolving conflicts over land use, and ensuring that justice was administered fairly within their domains. This required not only knowledge of legal customs and precedents, but also the wisdom to balance competing claims and find solutions that would preserve peace and order in the community. The education and cultural development of her children occupies a central place in the noblewoman's daily concerns. While peasant children learned through observation and participation in family work, noble children required formal education that would prepare them for leadership roles in society. The noblewoman must arrange for tutors who can teach reading, writing, mathematics, and religious instruction. She must also ensure that her daughters learn the refined skills expected of noble women: embroidery, music, dancing, and the complex etiquette of court life. Her sons require different, but equally important education, learning the arts of warfare, horsemanship, and the political skills needed to manage estates and maintain alliances. The noblewoman often plays a crucial role in arranging fostering agreements, sending her children to live with other noble families where they can learn from different mentors and form important social connections that will serve them throughout their lives. The creation and maintenance of beautiful objects occupies much of the noblewoman's personal time. Her embroidery work is not merely decorative, but serves important practical and symbolic purposes. She might spend months creating elaborate tapestries that will warm the castle's stone walls, while also displaying scenes that communicate the family's history, values, and aspirations. Her needlework appears on altar cloths for the castle chapel, banners that will accompany her husband in a battle, and clothing that announces the family's wealth and taste to all who see them. The noblewoman also serves as a patron of arts and learning, using the family's resources to support scholars, artists, and religious institutions. She might commission illuminated manuscripts, fund the construction or renovation of churches, or provide hospitality to traveling scholars and poets. These activities not only bring honor to her family, but also contribute to the preservation and advancement of medieval culture and learning. Her role as a diplomatic intermediary requires subtle skills and careful judgment. Noble marriages were often arranged to cement political alliances, and a noblewoman must maintain relationships with her birth family while also serving the interests of her husband's household. She corresponds with other noblewomen, sharing information about political developments, arranging marriages for younger relatives, and maintaining the network of relationships that could provide crucial support during times of conflict or crisis. The castle's religious life also falls under her guidance. She ensures that daily prayers are offered in the chapel, that religious festivals are observed with appropriate ceremony, and that the spiritual needs of everyone in the household are met. She might arrange for visiting priests to hear confessions, organize pilgrimages to important religious sites, or sponsor the copying of religious texts that will serve both devotional and educational purposes. When her husband is away, the noblewoman must be prepared to defend the castle and protect all those who depend upon her family for security. While she might not engage in physical combat herself, she must understand military strategy, maintain relationships with loyal knights and men-at-arms, and be capable of organizing an effective defense if enemies threaten the estate. Her courage and leadership during such crises often determine whether the family's power and property will survive intact. The seasonal rhythms that govern peasant life also shape the noblewoman's year, though in different ways. Spring brings the need to oversee planting on the estate's farms and to begin planning for the year's political and social activities. Summer might involve travel to other castles or to the royal court, maintaining the family's position in the broader noble society. Autumn requires supervision of the harvest and preparation for winter, while the cold months provide time for indoor activities like embroidery, reading, and the education of children. The noblewoman's influence extends beyond her immediate family and household to encompass charitable activities that benefit the broader community. She might establish hospitals for the care of the sick, provide food and clothing for the poor, or offer sanctuary to travelers and pilgrims. These activities reflect both Christian values and practical politics, as they help to maintain the support of common people whose loyalty might be crucial during times of conflict. Whether in cottage or castle, the care for health and the beginning of new life were quiet, universal experiences for women across all levels of medieval society. The knowledge and skills that peasant women used to tend their family's health found their counterparts in the noblewomen's understanding of herbs, healing, and the ancient arts of midwifery. Let's softly explore now the gentle practices of healing and childbirth in their world, as we discover how women of all social classes served as the primary guardians of health and life in medieval Europe. Imagine the soft glow of a candle in a quiet room, illuminating the gentle hands of a woman tending to the sick or assisting at a new birth. For women in medieval Europe, the quiet arts of healing and midwifery were deeply ingrained, passed down through generations like precious heirlooms of wisdom. Picture these remarkable women, their knowledge gleaned not from formal medical schools, which were closed to them, but from careful observation, patient practice, and the accumulated wisdom of countless mothers, grandmothers, and wise women who had served their communities for centuries. The medieval woman's understanding of healing began in her own garden, where she cultivated not just vegetables and herbs for cooking, but also a careful selection of plants whose medicinal properties had been proven through generations of use. She would rise early in the morning, when the dew still clung to the leaves, to gather her healing herbs at the moment when their potency was strongest. Her basket would fill with chamomile for soothing troubled stomachs, lavender for calming anxious minds, and willow bark for easing the pain of aching joints. Each plant in her medicinal garden was known to her as intimately as her own children. She understood not only what ailments each could treat, but also the proper time for harvesting, the correct methods of preparation, and the appropriate dosages for different ages and conditions. The knowledge came to her through years of apprenticeship under older women, watching carefully as they demonstrated the subtle arts of healing, listening intently as they shared the wisdom that could mean the difference between life and death. The preparation of medicines was a sacred art that required both skill and intuition. In the quiet hours of evening, when the day's other work was done, she would sit by the fire preparing tinctures, ointments, and herbal remedies. The pestle and mortar became extensions of her hands as she ground dried herbs into powders, the rhythmic motion soothing and meditative. She learned to judge by color, texture, and aroma when her preparations were ready. Her senses trained through years of practice to detect the subtle signs of proper preparation. For common ailments, she maintained a store of reliable remedies. Mint leaves steeped in hot water could ease digestive troubles, while a poultice of crushed garlic and honey could draw infection from wounds. She knew that feverfew could reduce the pain of headaches, that camphor leaves could accelerate the healing of broken bones, and that elderflower tea could provide relief from the symptoms of winter colds. These remedies were not merely folk beliefs, but treatments that had proven their effectiveness through countless applications over many generations. The treatment of wounds required particular skill and cleanliness. The medieval woman understood, perhaps through instinct and observation rather than formal medical theory, the importance of keeping wounds clean and protected from contamination. She would carefully wash injuries with boiled water that had been allowed to cool, removing dirt and debris with gentle but thorough attention. Her supplies included clean linen for bandages, prepared ointments to prevent infection, and herbal preparations that could reduce pain and promote healing. Burns were a common hazard in medieval households, where open fires provided heat and cooking flames. The wise woman knew to treat burns immediately with cool water, followed by applications of soothing substances like aloe or honey. She understood that severe burns required different treatment than minor ones, and she could judge when an injury was beyond her ability to treat, knowing when to seek help from more experienced healers or when to prepare the family for a possible loss. The care of children's ailments required special knowledge and gentle techniques. Children's bodies responded differently to medicines than adults, and the experienced healer learned to adjust her treatments accordingly. She knew that a feverish child needed different care than a feverish adult, that certain herbs were too strong for young systems, and that patience and comfort were often as important as any medicine she could provide. The seasonal illnesses that swept through medieval communities required community-wide responses, and women often coordinated their efforts to provide care for all who needed it. During outbreaks of winter fevers or summer stomach ailments, the women of the community would share their knowledge and resources, pooling their supplies of medicines and taking turns caring for the sick. These cooperative efforts not only provided better care for patients, but also served to pass medical knowledge from experienced healers to younger women who were still learning the arts of healing. Perhaps no aspect of medieval women's healing work was more important or more revered than their role as midwives, the gentle guardians who presided over the mystery of birth. The midwife occupied a unique position in medieval society, trusted with the most intimate and dangerous moments of women's lives, responsible for bringing new souls safely into the world while protecting the lives of mothers who faced genuine risks with each pregnancy. The training of a midwife began early and continued throughout her life. A young woman who showed aptitude for healing might be chosen by an experienced midwife to serve as her apprentice, accompanying her to births and gradually learning the complex skills required to assist in deliveries. She would learn to recognize the signs that indicated labor was beginning, to judge whether a pregnancy was progressing normally, and to identify the warning signs that might indicate dangerous complications. The midwife's knowledge encompassed not only the physical aspects of childbirth, but also the emotional and spiritual dimensions of this profound experience. She understood that her calm presence could help laboring women manage their fear and pain, that her confident voice could provide reassurance during the long hours of labor, and that her gentle hands could provide comfort and practical assistance throughout the birthing process. Preparation for childbirth began long before labor started. The experienced midwife would visit pregnant women regularly throughout their pregnancies, monitoring their health and providing advice about diet, exercise, and general care. She would teach expectant mothers breathing techniques that could help them manage labor pains, positions that might ease delivery, and mental preparations that could help them approach childbirth with confidence rather than fear. The birthing chamber was the midwife's domain, a space that she would carefully prepare for the sacred work of bringing new life into the world. She would ensure that the room was warm and clean, that fresh linens were available, and that all the tools and supplies she might need were within easy reach. Candles provided gentle light that would not startle newborns, while herbs burned in the fire might provide both pleasant aromas and medicinal benefits. During labor, the midwife served as both medical practitioner and spiritual guide. She would monitor the progress of labor, checking the position of the baby and the condition of the mother. Her experienced hands could often detect problems before they became dangerous, allowing her to take corrective action that might save both mother and child. She knew techniques for repositioning babies who were not in optimal positions for delivery, methods for managing excessive bleeding, and procedures for dealing with other complications that might arise. The moment of birth itself required all of the midwife's skill and attention. She would guide the baby's emergence, protecting both mother and child from injury, clearing the baby's airway to ensure proper breathing, and managing the delivery of the afterbirth. Her quick assessment of a newborn's condition allowed her to provide immediate care if needed, while her attention to the mother ensured that post-delivery complications were identified and treated promptly. The care provided after birth was equally important. The midwife would remain with the new mother for hours or even days after delivery, monitoring her recovery and providing practical assistance with the early challenges of nursing and infant care. She taught new mothers how to care for their babies, how to recognize signs of illness or distress, and how to manage the physical and emotional adjustments that follow childbirth. The midwife also served as a keeper of community knowledge about fertility, contraception, and women's health. Women would seek her advice about preventing pregnancy when their families were already large enough to strain their resources, or about encouraging conception when they desperately wanted children. Her knowledge in these areas was based on generations of observation and experience, passed down through networks of women who shared information about the intimate aspects of their lives. The spiritual dimensions of the midwife's work were as important as her medical skills. She often served as the one who performed emergency baptisms for babies who might not survive, ensuring that these souls would be welcomed into heaven. She provided comfort and counseling for women who lost babies, helping them process their grief while also attending to their physical recovery from difficult births. The midwife's reputation within her community was built through years of successful service, as women shared stories of her skill, compassion, and reliability. A good midwife might be called upon to travel considerable distances to assist at difficult births. Her expertise valued by families who understood that her presence could mean the difference between life and death for both mother and child. The knowledge and skills of these quiet healers were preserved and transmitted through informal networks of women who understood the vital importance of their work. Recipes for medicines were shared between neighbors. Techniques for managing difficult births were demonstrated and practiced, and the wisdom accumulated over generations was carefully passed down to ensure that each community would have women capable of providing essential health care. From the quiet care of the body, we gently turn now to the solace of the soul. The same women who tended physical ailments and brought new life into the world also sought spiritual healing and divine connection through religious devotion. Let's drift towards the tranquil world of faith and the quiet, devoted lives of women within the church, as we explore how some medieval women found their calling in the peaceful silence of convent walls and the gentle rhythms of religious life. Imagine the quiet hush within a stone cloister, bathed in the soft light of morning. For some women in medieval Europe, a profound calling led them to a life of quiet devotion, finding peace and purpose within the serene walls of a convent. Picture, if you will, the gentle footsteps of nuns moving silently along cool stone corridors, their soft woolen habits rustling quietly as they make their way to morning prayers. The decision to enter religious life was often made with careful consideration, sometimes as a young girl, sometimes later in life. Perhaps a widow seeking solace after loss, or a young woman drawn by an inner calling to serve God. Whatever brought them to the convent doors, these women found within those walls a different kind of existence, one measured not by the demands of household management or the cycles of childbirth, but by the gentle rhythms of prayer, work, and contemplation. Let us drift now into the peaceful world of the medieval convent, where time moved differently, marked not by the crow of the rooster or the setting sun alone, but by the soft chiming of bells calling the sisters to their devotions. The day began before dawn in the hushed darkness of the chapel, where voices joined in quiet harmony, their whispered prayers rising like gentle incense. The daily routine, or horarium, as it was known, provided a comforting structure that many found deeply satisfying. After the early morning service of lauds, the sisters might spend time in quiet reflection before breaking their fast with simple bread and perhaps a bit of cheese or porridge. The silence that often accompanied these meals was not empty, but full, a peaceful quiet that allowed for inner contemplation and gratitude. Following the morning meal, the nuns would disperse to their various labors. Some might tend to the convent's gardens, their hands gently working the soil, planting herbs for healing or vegetables for sustenance. Others would settle into the scriptorium, that quiet chamber where manuscripts were carefully copied by hand. Imagine the soft scratch of quill against parchment, the gentle concentration as each letter was formed with reverent care. These women were often among the most learned of their time, preserving ancient texts and creating beautiful illuminated manuscripts that would survive for centuries. The work of copying was more than mere transcription. It was a form of prayer itself. As a nun carefully traced each sacred word, she was communing with the divine, her mind focused on the holy text before her. Some convents became renowned centers of learning, where women could study theology, philosophy, and the natural sciences in ways that might have been impossible in the outside world. In the infirmary, sister healers tended to the sick with gentle hands and herbal remedies. The knowledge of healing plants was often passed down through generations of nuns, creating a quiet tradition of medical care that served not only the convent community, but often the surrounding villages as well. Picture the soft rustle of herbs being sorted, the gentle grinding of medicines, the whispered prayers for healing offered over each preparation. The midday service of sex provided another moment of collective peace, voices joining once again in quiet harmony. Then came the main meal of the day, perhaps accompanied by readings from sacred texts, words of wisdom and comfort that nourish the soul as surely as the simple food nourished the body. Afternoons might bring more work in the gardens, time spent spinning wool or weaving cloth, or perhaps teaching young girls who had been entrusted to the convent's care. These abbey schools provided education for daughters of nobility and sometimes for promising girls from humbler backgrounds, a quiet revolution in learning that would echo through the centuries. Some nuns found their calling in creating beautiful objects for worship, delicate embroidery for altar cloths, carefully carved wooden crosses, or the gentle art of illuminating prayer books with gold leaf and brilliant colors. Each creation was an offering, a prayer made manifest in thread and paint and precious metal. The evening services of Vespers and Compline brought the day full circle as the sisters gathered once more in the hushed sanctuary of the chapel. The soft glow of candles created a peaceful atmosphere conducive to reflection on the day's labors and preparation for restful sleep. But convent life was not merely about work and prayer. It also provided a unique form of community for women. Within the cloister walls, friendships bloomed between sisters who shared not only their daily labors, but their spiritual journey. Imagine quiet conversations in the garden as they tended their plants, or the gentle support offered during times of illness or sorrow. Many convents were led by abbesses, women of remarkable capability who managed vast properties, oversaw complex agricultural operations, and negotiated with secular authorities. These women wielded considerable influence, making decisions that affected not only their communities, but the broader region. Picture an abbess in her private chamber, quietly reviewing accounts, planning improvements to the convent's lands, or corresponding with other religious houses. The economic contribution of convents to medieval society was substantial. Many were self-sufficient communities that produced goods for trade, fine textiles, illuminated manuscripts, medicinal preparations, and preserved foods. The quiet industry of these women created wealth that supported not only their own communities, but contributed to the broader medieval economy. Some nuns achieved remarkable intellectual heights, becoming respected theologians, writers, or natural philosophers. Their works, often preserved in convent libraries, provided insights into medieval thought and spirituality that might otherwise have been lost. These women found in religious life the freedom to pursue learning and contemplation in ways that secular life might not have permitted. The convent also served as a refuge for women in difficult circumstances. Widows seeking security, daughters of families unable to provide dowries, or women called by genuine spiritual conviction. All could find shelter and purpose within the cloister walls. The community provided not just physical security, but emotional and spiritual support that sustained them through life's challenges. Seasonal rhythms marked the passing of time within the convent just as they did in the outside world, but with their own special observances. Advent brought quiet preparation and anticipation. Christmas, a gentle celebration of the divine birth. Lent, a time of reflection and renewal. Easter arrived with quiet joy and the promise of resurrection, while the long summer months provided time for garden work and manuscript copying. The gentle sounds of convent life created their own peaceful symphony. The soft chanting of prayers, the whisper of pages turning, the quiet scratch of pen on parchment, the gentle swish of habits as sisters moved through their daily routines. Even in silence, there was a fullness, a sense of purpose and peace that pervaded these sacred spaces. Many nuns lived remarkably long lives by medieval standards, perhaps sustained by the regular routine, simple diet, and peaceful environment of convent life. They aged gracefully within communities that valued their wisdom and experience, passing on their knowledge to younger sisters and maintaining the traditions that had sustained their houses for generations. The architectural beauty of many convents reflected the quiet devotion of their inhabitants. Graceful arches, peaceful gardens, cells designed for contemplation. These spaces were created to inspire prayer and reflection. Imagine the soft play of light through stained glass windows, the gentle echo of footsteps in stone corridors, the peaceful atmosphere that invited quiet communion with the divine. For women who chose this path, the convent offered something precious and rare in medieval society: the opportunity to live a life centered on learning, contemplation, and service to God. Their quiet devotion, their patient scholarship, their gentle healing touch, all contributed to the rich tapestry of medieval life in ways that extended far beyond the cloister walls. As we drift away from these peaceful enclaves, let us carry with us the image of these devoted women, their lives a testament to the power of quiet faith and gentle service. Their legacy lives on in the manuscripts they preserved, the traditions they maintained, and the example they set of lives lived in harmony with their deepest convictions. Beyond the sacred silence of the convent, many women in the bustling towns found their own quiet paths in commerce and craft. Let's softly explore now their gentle contributions to the marketplace and the guild. Imagine the gentle hum of a busy market square, or the soft rhythmic click-clack of a loom. In the burgeoning towns of medieval Europe, women played vital, if often quiet, roles in trade and craft, their gentle hands shaping goods and livelihoods with the same quiet competence they brought to all their endeavors. As dawn broke over the cobblestone streets of a medieval town, women could be found preparing for another day of gentle commerce. Picture a baker's wife, her hands dusted with flour, carefully arranging loaves of fresh bread on wooden shelves. The warm, yeasty aroma filled the small shop as she quietly prepared for the morning customers who would soon arrive seeking their daily sustenance. In the weaving districts, the soft sound of shuttles moving back and forth created a peaceful rhythm that marked the passage of time. Women weavers, often working in their own homes or small workshops, produced the fine textiles that clothed medieval society. Their skilled fingers guided threads of wool, linen, and sometimes silk into beautiful patterns that would grace the garments of nobles and merchants alike. The guild system, that quiet backbone of medieval urban commerce, often welcomed women as members or allowed them to work under their husbands' memberships. In some trades, women formed their own guilds, creating communities of craftswomen who supported each other and maintained standards of quality. Imagine the gentle camaraderie of silk workers gathering to discuss techniques, or brewsters sharing secrets for the perfect ale. Brewing was perhaps one of the most common occupations for urban women. The alewife was a familiar figure in medieval towns, her expertise in fermentation and flavoring creating the daily drink that was safer than water for most people. Picture her carefully tending to her brewing vessels, testing the flavor, adjusting the mixture with herbs and spices until the perfect balance was achieved. The soft bubbling of fermenting ale provided a constant, comforting background sound in many homes. In the textile trades, women's roles extended far beyond simple weaving. They were spinners, creating the thread that would become cloth, their wheels humming quietly in rhythm with their work. They were dyers, carefully mixing colors from roots, berries, and imported substances to create the rich hues that made medieval clothing so vibrant. They were seamstresses and embroiderers, their needles dancing through fabric to create both practical garments and decorative masterpieces. The marketplace itself was often a woman's domain during certain hours of the day. While men might handle the larger wholesale transactions, women frequently managed the retail sales, their gentle voices calling out the quality of their wares. Picture a fishmonger's wife, her weathered hands displaying the morning's catch, or a vegetable seller arranging her produce in appealing displays, each turnip and onion placed with care. Many women operated as petty traders, carrying goods from farm to town or between different markets. These quiet entrepreneurs developed networks of suppliers and customers, their reputation for honest dealing and quality goods spreading through word of mouth. They might specialize in particular items, fine needles, imported spices, or handcrafted pottery, becoming known as the person to see for specific needs. The inn and tavern trade offered another avenue for women's participation in urban commerce. The innkeeper's wife was often the heart of the establishment, managing the kitchen, overseeing the serving of meals, and ensuring that travelers felt welcomed and comfortable. Her gentle hospitality could make the difference between a successful business and a failing one. Some women became money changers or small-scale bankers, their mathematical skills and reputation for honesty making them trusted handlers of coins and credit. They might operate from a simple table in the market square, carefully weighing silver pieces and calculating exchange rates with quiet precision. The production of luxury goods often fell to women's skilled hands. Imagine a goldsmith's wife, her fingers delicately shaping precious metal into jewelry and decorative objects. Or picture an illuminator, bent over her work table, carefully applying gold leaf to a manuscript page, her breath held steady as she created beauty that would last for centuries. In a growing book trade, women played essential roles as copyists, illuminators, and even as sellers of finished manuscripts. Some operated scriptoriums from their homes, employing other women to help meet the demand for religious texts, legal documents, and literary works. The quiet scratch of quills and the soft rustle of parchment filled these peaceful workshops. The spice trade, with its exotic goods from distant lands, often involved women as retailers who understood how to use these precious substances. They knew which spices enhanced which foods, which had medicinal properties, and how to store them properly to maintain their potency. Their knowledge made them valuable intermediaries between wholesale importers and individual customers. Silk working was a particularly prestigious craft, often dominated by women. The delicate nature of the material required gentle handling and patient skill. Picture a silk weaver at her loom, the precious threads gleaming in the morning light as she carefully created fabric fit for the highest nobles. The finished silk, with its lustrous beauty, commanded high prices and brought considerable income to skilled practitioners. The production of household items, soap, candles, pottery, and small tools, often fell to women who combined domestic knowledge with commercial acumen. They understood what housewives needed because they were housewives themselves, creating products that met real needs with practical efficiency. Many women operated seasonal businesses, timing their activities to match agricultural cycles or religious observances. They might make and sell special foods for feast days, create decorative items for weddings, or provide services during harvest time. This flexibility allowed them to balance family responsibilities with commercial activities. The gentle art of healing extended into commercial activities as well. Women herbalists sold medicinal preparations, their knowledge of plants and remedies making them sought-after providers of health care. They might operate from a small shop or travel between markets, their reputation for effective treatments drawing customers from considerable distances. In the emerging banking districts of major cities, some women inherited or established money-lending operations. They needed to be skilled in calculation, judgment of character, and negotiation, all while maintaining the gentle demeanor expected of their sex. Their success often depended on building long-term relationships based on trust and fair dealing. The clothing trade provided numerous opportunities for women's participation. Beyond making clothes, they might specialize in particular aspects, creating fine embroidery, working with furs, or importing fashion innovations from other regions. The wealthy medieval woman's desire for beautiful clothing created a substantial market for skilled craftswomen. Some women became traveling merchants, joining the caravans that moved goods between distant cities. This required considerable courage and business acumen, but offered the possibility of substantial profits for those willing to take the risks. It might specialize in lightweight, high-value goods that could be easily transported. The quiet efficiency of women in trade often made them preferred partners for business transactions. Their reputation for careful attention to detail, honest dealing, and patient negotiation made them valuable participants in the complex web of medieval commerce. As evening fell over the medieval town, shops would close and the gentle sounds of commerce would fade. But the work continued in homes and workshops, where women's hands kept busy with spinning, weaving, brewing, and crafting. The soft glow of oil lamps illuminated their quiet industry, preparing goods for tomorrow's trade. As women moved through their daily lives, whether in quiet contemplation or gentle commerce, their legal standing also shaped their experiences. Let's drift now to the subtle nuances of their rights and societal protections. In the quiet complexity of medieval society, a woman's journey was subtly shaped by a tapestry of laws and customs. Imagine the ancient parchments, perhaps whispered among learned clerks, outlining the quiet rules that guided a woman's rights and protections in medieval Europe. These legal frameworks, while often restrictive by modern standards, nonetheless provided a structure within which women could navigate their lives with a certain degree of security and agency. The legal status of a medieval woman was like a gentle river, flowing differently depending on the terrain across. Her rights and protections varied considerably based on her social class, the region where she lived, whether she was married or single, and the particular legal traditions that governed her community. Picture, if you will, the quiet consultation between a woman and a learned clerk, discussing the subtle implications of local customs and written law. In the early medieval period, many legal systems recognized women's capacity to own property, particularly when they were unmarried or widowed. A single woman, or femme sole, as she was sometimes known, could often conduct business, make contracts, and manage her own affairs with considerable independence. Imagine a young woman inheriting her father's workshop, quietly taking over the management of his craft business, her legal right to do so protected by ancient customs. Marriage, however, created a different legal landscape. Under many legal systems, a married woman's property and legal identity became merged with that of her husband. This concept, known as coverture, meant that she could not typically make contracts or conduct legal business without his consent. Yet even within this framework, women found ways to exercise quiet influence and maintain some degree of autonomy. The legal protections afforded to women often reflected society's recognition of their vulnerability. Laws against assault, rape, and abandonment provided some recourse for women who suffer harm, though the effectiveness of these protections varied greatly. Picture a woman seeking justice in a local court, her quiet dignity maintained even as she navigated a system designed primarily by and for men. Widowhood brought both challenges and opportunities from a legal perspective. A widow might inherit a portion of her husband's property, her dower, which provided some security for her remaining years. In many regions, this might be 1/3 of his estate, a recognition that she had contributed to its accumulation through her labor and partnership. Imagine a widow quietly taking inventory of her inheritance, planning how to manage her resources for the years ahead. The law of inheritance created complex patterns of property transmission that affected women's lives in profound ways. While primogeniture, inheritance by the eldest son, was common for major estates, many regions had more flexible systems that allowed daughters to inherit in the absence of male heirs. Picture a noble family's quiet deliberations as they arrange for their daughter to inherit lands and titles, ensuring the continuation of their line. In the commercial sphere, Women's legal status was often more favorable than in other areas of life. Guild regulations frequently allowed widows to continue their deceased husband's businesses, recognizing their practical knowledge and established customer relationships. Some guilds even admitted women as full members, granting them the same legal protections and obligations as their male counterparts. The legal framework surrounding marriage involved complex negotiations and agreements. Marriage contracts, or settlements, could specify the terms under which a woman would enter marriage, including what property she would bring, her dowry, and what she would receive in return, her dower. These documents, carefully drafted by family advisors, represented quiet but important legal protections for women. Property rights for women varied significantly across different regions of medieval Europe. In some areas, women retained ownership of property they brought to marriage, while in others, it became their husbands to manage. Legal systems like the Salic law in France excluded women from inheriting certain types of property, while English common law developed more flexible approaches over time. The Church's canon law created another layer of legal protection and restriction for medieval women. While it reinforced many social limitations on women's roles, it also provided important protections, particularly regarding marriage consent and the treatment of wives by their husbands. The requirement that both parties consent to marriage, for example, gave women some protection against forced unions. Legal documents from the medieval period reveal women actively participating in property transactions, despite the formal limitations on their legal capacity. Court records show women buying and selling land, making loans, and engaging in complex business arrangements. These activities suggest that the practical realities of medieval life often allowed more flexibility than strict legal theory might suggest. The administration of justice in medieval Europe often involved local courts where customary law prevailed over written statutes. In these settings, a woman's reputation and social standing could influence the outcome of legal proceedings as much as formal legal principles. Picture a local court session where the testimony of respected women in the community carries significant weight in determining the truth of disputed matters. For peasant women, legal protections were often minimal, but they were not entirely absent. Manor court records show women bringing complaints about unfair treatment, defending their rights to land tenure, and seeking redress for various grievances. While their options were limited, the existence of legal forums gave them some recourse when facing serious problems. The legal concept of femme sole status allowed some married women to conduct business independently of their husbands, particularly when the husband was absent due to travel or military service. This recognition of practical necessity created opportunities for women to develop commercial skills and maintain family enterprises during their husband's absence. Ecclesiastical courts handle matters relating to marriage, divorce, and moral conduct, creating a parallel legal system that sometimes offered different protections than secular law. Women might find more sympathetic treatment in church courts, particularly in matters relating to marriage disputes or requests for separation due to abuse or abandonment. The legal status of noble women was often more complex than that of their lower-class counterparts. While they might enjoy greater property rights and social influence, they were also subject to additional restrictions related to their family's political interests. Marriage alliances, inheritance arrangements, and political loyalties all created legal obligations that shaped their choices. Regional variations in legal systems meant that a woman's rights might change dramatically if she moved from one area to another. What was permitted under one lord's jurisdiction might be forbidden under another's, creating a complex patchwork of rights and restrictions that required careful navigation. The development of written law codes during the later medieval period gradually replaced many customary practices, sometimes improving women's legal status and sometimes restricting it further. These changes occurred slowly and unevenly, creating transitional periods where old and new systems coexisted in sometimes contradictory ways. Legal records reveal that women frequently served as witnesses in court proceedings, their testimony valued despite formal limitations on their legal capacity. This suggests that medieval society recognized women's practical knowledge and moral authority, even when formal legal theory questioned their competence. The quiet evolution of women's legal status throughout the medieval period reflected broader changes in society, economy, and culture. While progress was slow and uneven, the foundations were being laid for the gradual expansion of women's rights that would continue in subsequent centuries. Beyond the legal documents, women often wielded a powerful, yet gentle, influence in their communities through their reputation and actions. Let's softly explore now the quiet power of their social standing and informal authority. Beyond formal titles or written laws, women in medieval Europe often held a quiet, pervasive influence, a power woven through the subtle threads of reputation, wisdom, and community trust. Imagine the gentle deference shown to an experienced midwife, or the quiet respect for a wise matriarch whose counsel was sought by neighbors and family members alike. This informal authority, built slowly over years of consistent character and helpful service, often proved more enduring than any official position. Picture, if you will, a village morning where women gather at the well to draw water for their households. Here, in these quiet moments of daily routine, reputations are built and maintained through gentle conversation, shared concerns, and the subtle exchange of wisdom. The woman whose advice is most sought, whose judgment is most trusted, whose presence brings comfort to troubled hearts. She wields a power that needs no formal recognition to be deeply felt throughout the community. Social standing for medieval women was like a tapestry woven from many delicate threads. A woman's family background provided the initial pattern, whether she came from nobility, merchant class, or peasant stock. But over time, her own actions, choices, and character added new colors and textures to this foundation. A peasant woman known for her healing skills might earn respect that transcended her humble birth, while a noble woman who failed to fulfill social expectations might find her influence quietly diminished. The concept of honor was central to medieval social standing, and for women, this honor was often closely tied to concepts of virtue, wisdom, and service to others. A woman who maintained her reputation for honesty in business dealings, faithfulness in marriage, and kindness to those in need built a form of social capital that could be drawn upon throughout her life. This quiet accumulation of respect created opportunities and protections that formal law might not provide. Motherhood brought its own form of social standing, particularly for women who successfully raised children to productive adulthood. Imagine the quiet pride of a mother whose sons became respected craftsmen or whose daughters made advantageous marriages. Her success in this fundamental role enhanced her standing not only within her family, but throughout her community, marking her as someone who understood how to nurture and guide the next generation. The role of matchmaker was one that many older women assumed naturally. Their knowledge of families, personalities, and practical considerations making them valuable advisors in marriage arrangements. Picture the gentle consultations that took place in private chambers, where experienced women shared their wisdom about potential unions, weighing the benefits and challenges that different partnerships might bring. Religious devotion provided another avenue for women to build social standing and influence. A woman known for her piety her charitable works, and her spiritual wisdom might find herself consulted on matters both sacred and secular. Her prayers might be especially sought during times of illness or crisis, and her counsel valued because it was believed to carry divine blessing. Economic success, when achieved through honest means, enhanced a woman's social standing significantly. A successful brewer, skilled seamstress, or prosperous merchant's wife commanded respect that extended beyond her immediate trade. Her financial independence or contribution to family prosperity demonstrated competence and reliability, qualities that medieval society valued highly in both men and women. The gentle art of hospitality was another means by which women built and maintained their social standing. A hostess known for her gracious welcome, excellent table, and comfortable accommodations for guests enhanced not only her own reputation, but that of her entire household. Picture the careful preparations, the attention to detail, the warm greetings that marked such a woman's approach to receiving visitors. Knowledge and wisdom in specialized areas created their own forms of authority. An herbalist whose remedies proved effective, a midwife whose patients thrived, a woman skilled in legal matters who could advise on property transactions. Each built a reputation that brought both respect and responsibility. Their expertise made them essential members of their communities, consulted and valued for their particular skills. The patronage system allowed some women, particularly those of higher social standing, to extend their influence through supporting others. A noblewoman who sponsored craftspeople, supported religious institutions, or provided opportunities for promising young people created networks of loyalty and gratitude that enhanced her power and influence far beyond her immediate household. Marriage alliances were often as much about connecting families and building social networks as about individual affection. Women played crucial roles in maintaining these connections through correspondence, visits, and the subtle diplomacy that kept family relationships harmonious. Picture the careful letters exchanged between female relatives, sharing news, offering support, and maintaining the bonds that held extended families together. The informal networks that women created through their daily activities at markets, mills, churches, and social gatherings formed invisible but powerful channels of information and influence. A woman well connected to these networks could learn about opportunities, hear early warnings about problems, and mobilize support when needed. Her position within these social webs often determined her family's access to resources and protection. Age brought its own form of authority for women who had lived long and observantly. The elderly woman who had witnessed many seasons of change, who remembered how previous crises had been resolved, whose experience encompassed births, deaths, harvests, and hardships. Her perspective was valued as a guide for navigating current challenges. Picture the quiet consultations where younger people sought her wisdom about difficult decisions. Reputation for fairness and justice made some women natural arbitrators in community disputes. When neighbors disagreed about property boundaries, trade arrangements, or personal grievances, they might seek out a woman known for her balanced judgment and diplomatic skills. Her ability to help others find peaceful resolutions enhanced her standing as a person of wisdom and integrity. The management of household staff and resources demonstrated organizational skills that translated into broader social influence. A woman who could coordinate complex domestic operations, manage budgets effectively, and maintain harmonious relationships among servants showed capabilities that extended beyond the home. Such competence often led to requests for advice about similar challenges in other contexts. Cultural and artistic patronage provided another avenue for women to build lasting influence. Those who supported musicians, artists or writers created legacies that extended beyond their lifetimes. Their taste and judgment in cultural matters could influence fashions, artistic styles, and literary trends, creating a form of cultural authority that shaped their society's aesthetic sensibilities. The gentle power of moral authority was perhaps the most subtle but enduring form of influence that medieval women could wield. A woman whose life exemplified the virtues her society valued: compassion, courage, wisdom, faithfulness, became a living standard against which others measured themselves. Her approval was sought, her disapproval feared, not because of any formal power she held, but because her good opinion represented the community's highest ideals. Social standing also brought responsibilities and expectations that could be burdensome as well as empowering. A woman of high reputation was expected to maintain certain standards, support certain causes, and provide certain services to her community. The gentle weight of these expectations shaped her choices and limited her freedom even as it enhanced her influence. The cultivation of social standing required patience, consistency, and careful attention to community values and expectations. It was built through countless small actions: a kind word to a struggling neighbor, fair dealing in business matters, appropriate behavior at social gatherings, generous sharing of knowledge and resources. Each positive interaction added to the slow accumulation of respect and trust. The transmission of social standing from mother to daughter was often as important as the transfer of material inheritance. A mother's reputation could open doors for her daughters, just as her failures might create obstacles they would need to overcome. Picture the careful instruction that mothers provided about proper behavior, social expectations, and the subtle arts of building and maintaining relationships. As the years quietly passed, the medieval world slowly began to transition, bringing subtle shifts to women's roles. Let's drift now towards the gentle echoes of these changes and their quiet resilience across the centuries. As the great tapestry of medieval Europe slowly, gently unraveled and rewove itself through the centuries, the lives and roles of women also began to subtly shift and adapt. Imagine the quiet adjustments, the gentle embracing of new opportunities or challenges as the medieval world gradually transformed around them. Like water finding new channels as the landscape changes, women discovered ways to navigate these shifting circumstances with their characteristic resilience and quiet wisdom. The growth of towns and cities created new possibilities for women's participation in economic life. Picture a young woman leaving her family's rural cottage to seek opportunities in a bustling town, her bundle of possessions small, but her hopes large. The urban environment offered different challenges than country life, but also different freedoms. In cities, a woman might find work in ways that village life could never provide: as a servant in a wealthy household, an apprentice to a skilled craftswoman, or eventually as an independent trader in the marketplace. The expansion of trade routes brought exotic goods and new ideas into European communities, creating opportunities for women who could adapt to changing demands. Imagine a merchant's wife learning to identify the quality of imported spices, or a weaver experimenting with new techniques learned from traveling craftspeople. These quiet innovations, often occurring in homes and small workshops, contributed to the slow transformation of medieval economic life. The gradual increase in literacy, particularly in urban areas, opened new possibilities for women's participation in intellectual and commercial life. Picture a mother teaching her daughter to read, not just for religious purposes, but so she might help manage the family's business accounts. Or imagine a woman carefully copying legal documents, her writing skills providing income and independence that previous generations might not have enjoyed. Changes in agricultural practices and land management created subtle shifts in rural women's roles. As farming techniques evolved and new crops were introduced, women adapted their knowledge of food preparation, preservation, and household management. The gentle transformation of medieval agriculture required the kind of practical wisdom that women had always provided, but applied to new circumstances and challenges. The devastating impact of plague in the 14th century, while bringing immense suffering, also created unexpected opportunities for those who survived. With populations reduced and labor scarce, women sometimes found themselves able to take on roles previously reserved for men. Picture a woman stepping into her deceased husband's trade, not just temporarily, but permanently, her skills and determination earning her acceptance in roles once thought impossible for her sex. The rise of universities and formal education, while initially excluding women, nonetheless created ripple effects that influenced their lives. As educated men returned to their communities with new ideas and knowledge, women adapted to these changes, often serving as bridges between traditional wisdom and new learning. Imagine the quiet conversations between a university-educated son and his mother, sharing knowledge that blended ancient household wisdom with newer scholarly insights. The development of more sophisticated financial systems created opportunities for women with mathematical skills and business acumen. As banking and credit became more complex, some women found niches as money changers, small-scale lenders, or managers of family financial affairs. Their reputation for careful attention to detail and honest dealing made them valuable participants in the evolving commercial world. The growth of pilgrimage as both religious practice and economic activity provided new opportunities for women's participation in travel and hospitality industries. Picture a woman establishing a small and along a pilgrimage route. Her understanding of travelers' needs and her reputation for honest dealing creating a steady income from the steady stream of religious journeys. Changes in fashion and material culture created new markets for women's skills in textile production and decoration. As clothing styles became more elaborate and varied, demand increased for skilled seamstresses, embroiderers, and decorative artists. The gentle evolution of medieval fashion provided opportunities for women to specialize in luxury crafts that commanded higher prices and greater respect. The expansion of religious institutions, including new monastic orders and lay religious organizations, offered women additional paths for meaningful participation in spiritual life. These new forms of religious expression sometimes provided more flexibility than traditional convents, allowing women to combine religious devotion with continued family responsibilities or commercial activities. Technological innovations, though gradual in the medieval period, created subtle changes in women's work patterns. The improvement of spinning wheels increased efficiency in textile production, while advances in milling and food processing changed the nature of household management. Women adapted to these innovations, often becoming the primary users and sometimes the improvers of domestic technology. The slow development of vernacular literature and local languages created opportunities for women to participate in cultural life in new ways. As literature moved beyond Latin and scholarly circles, women could engage more fully with written culture, both as readers and sometimes as writers. Picture a woman listening to stories told in her own language, finding in them reflections of her own experiences and aspirations. Political changes, including the consolidation of kingdoms and the development of more complex governmental structures, created new roles for noble women as diplomatic intermediaries and political advisors. While still operating within traditional constraints, some women found ways to exercise influence in political affairs through their family connections and personal relationships. The gradual shift from feudal to more commercial economic systems provided women with new opportunities for economic independence, but also new challenges as traditional support systems evolved. Women had to adapt to changing relationships between lords and tenants, employers and workers, creating new forms of security and community support. Regional variations in these changes meant that women's experiences of transition varied considerably depending on where they lived. A woman in a prosperous trading city might experience rapid change and new opportunities, while her rural counterpart might see more gradual transformation. These different paces of change created a complex mosaic of women's experiences across medieval Europe. The slow evolution of legal systems, while often maintaining traditional restrictions, also created some new protections and opportunities for women. Court records from later medieval periods show women increasingly participating in legal proceedings, suggesting growing recognition of their capacity and rights in certain circumstances. Climate changes and agricultural challenges required adaptations in food production and household management that often fell primarily to women. Their traditional knowledge of food preservation, alternative crops, and resource management became crucial during periods of scarcity or environmental stress. The increasing complexity of medieval society created demands for specialized knowledge and skills that women could provide, whether in healthcare, education, crafts, or household management. The growing sophistication of medieval life created niches where women's expertise was valued and compensated. Throughout all these changes, women demonstrated remarkable adaptability, finding ways to maintain their essential roles while embracing new possibilities. Their quiet resilience and practical wisdom helped their families and communities navigate the slow transformation of medieval society, creating foundations for the changes that would continue in subsequent centuries. And so, as our quiet journey nears its end, let us gently contemplate the lasting echoes of these remarkable women. Let's take our final soft steps now towards their quiet legacy and the enduring impact they left on the world. As our quiet journey nears its end, let us gently contemplate the lasting echoes of the women of medieval Europe. Their lives, though often hidden in the grand narratives, were the quiet, sturdy threads that formed the very fabric of their world, a legacy that softly resonates even today. Picture, if you will, the gentle continuity that flows from their careful hands to our modern world, an unbroken chain of wisdom, resilience, and quiet strength that spans the centuries. The domestic wisdom that medieval women cultivated and preserved became the foundation upon which entire societies were built. Their knowledge of nutrition, hygiene, and household management created the stable environments necessary for families to thrive and communities to prosper. Imagine the countless meals prepared with care, the homes maintained with loving attention, the children nurtured with patient guidance, all contributing to the slow but steady growth of European civilization. In the realm of healthcare and healing, medieval women's contributions echo through the ages. Their careful observation of herbal remedies, their understanding of the human body's needs during illness and childbirth, their gentle bedside manner that combined practical skill with emotional comfort. These formed the earliest foundations of medical practice. Picture the wisdom passed quietly from mother to daughter, creating an unbroken tradition of healing knowledge that would eventually inform more formal medical training. The textile arts that women perfected during the medieval period created not only clothing and household goods, but also the economic foundations for entire regions. Their innovations in spinning, weaving, dyeing, and embroidery established techniques and standards that influenced fashion and trade for centuries. The beautiful tapestries, fine linens, and sturdy woolens they created became the basis for Europe's textile industry, their quiet artistry laying groundwork for future prosperity. In the preservation and transmission of culture, medieval women played an indispensable role that often went unrecognized. Picture the countless hours spent teaching children not just practical skills, but also stories, songs, and traditions that carried the soul of their communities forward through time. Their gentle voices passing down folk tales, their patient instruction in customs and values, their quiet maintenance of family histories, all contributed to the cultural continuity that defines European heritage. The economic contributions of medieval women created patterns of commerce and industry that would endure for generations. Their participation in markets, their management of household economies, their innovations in food production and preservation, their skills in crafts and trades, all helped establish the commercial networks and practices that would support Europe's economic development. Their quiet efficiency and honest dealing created trust and stability in business relationships that became the foundation for more complex economic systems. The educational influence of medieval women, though informal, was profound and lasting. As the primary teachers of young children, they shaped countless minds during the most formative years. Picture the gentle lessons taught at hearth and garden, the patient correction of childish mistakes, the loving encouragement that helped children develop confidence and capability. Their informal pedagogy created the human foundation upon which formal educational systems would later be built. In the realm of spiritual and moral development, medieval women's influence extended far beyond their immediate families. Their example of faith, their practice of charity, their embodiment of virtues like patience, compassion, and perseverance. These created moral standards that shaped entire communities. Their quiet piety and practical Christianity demonstrated how spiritual principles could be lived out in daily life, creating models of faithful living that inspired others across generations. The social networks that medieval women created and maintained became the invisible infrastructure that held communities together. Their connections through kinship, friendship, trade, and shared activities created channels of communication, support, and mutual aid that sustained societies through difficult times. Picture the gentle web of relationships that ensured no widow went uncared for, no child went unfed, no crisis went unaddressed through community response. The adaptability and resilience that medieval women demonstrated in facing change became a cultural inheritance that served future generations well. Their ability to maintain essential functions while adjusting to new circumstances, their practical problem-solving skills, their capacity to find opportunity within constraint. These qualities became part of the cultural DNA that helped European societies navigate subsequent transformations. The artistic and creative contributions of medieval women, though often anonymous, enriched the aesthetic life of their communities in ways that continue to influence us today. Their embroidery patterns, their garden designs, their innovations in cooking and food presentation, their contributions to manuscript illumination, all added beauty and refinement to daily life, creating standards of excellence that elevated the ordinary into the extraordinary. The legal and political influence that some medieval women exercised, despite formal limitations, established precedents and expectations that would eventually contribute to expanded rights for women. Their successful management of estates, their diplomatic skills, their participation in business and legal affairs, all demonstrated women's capabilities in ways that could not be entirely ignored by subsequent generations. The preservation of knowledge that occurred in medieval convents and through women's informal networks created intellectual resources that would prove invaluable during periods of rapid change. Their careful copying of manuscripts, their maintenance of medicinal knowledge, their preservation of craft techniques, all contributed to the continuity of learning that survived wars, plagues, and political upheavals. The agricultural innovations that medieval women developed in their gardens, kitchens, and food storage areas contributed to improved nutrition and food security that supported population growth and social development. Their understanding of crop rotation, seed selection, food preservation, and cooking techniques helped establish the agricultural foundations that would sustain Europe's growing population. The entrepreneurial spirit that many medieval women demonstrated in their participation in trade and craft production created economic opportunities and established business practices that would influence commercial development for centuries. Their innovations in marketing, their understanding of consumer needs, their development of quality standards, all contributed to the evolution of European commerce. Perhaps most importantly, medieval women's quiet demonstration that competence, wisdom, and moral authority were not limited by gender created expectations and aspirations that would eventually challenge formal restrictions on women's roles. Their practical achievements, their intellectual contributions, their moral leadership, all provided evidence that women's capabilities extended far beyond traditional limitations. The legacy of medieval women is written not in grand monuments or famous deeds, but in the quiet continuity of human civilization itself. Every skill passed down, every tradition maintained, every innovation preserved, every act of compassion remembered. These form the true inheritance they left to the world. Their gentle hands shaped not only their own time, but all the times that followed, creating foundations of wisdom, skill, and strength upon which countless future generations would build. In our modern world, we can still trace the echoes of their influence in the values we cherish, the skills we practice, the communities we build, and the resilience we demonstrate in facing our own challenges. Their quiet legacy reminds us that history's true builders are often those whose names are never recorded, whose contributions are never celebrated, but whose faithful service creates the foundations upon which all human progress rests. And so, our story softly concludes, leaving us with a gentle sense of wonder at the quiet power of women's hidden lives. As these final thoughts drift away, allow yourself to simply rest. And so, our quiet journey through the multifaceted, yet often hidden, lives of women in medieval Europe softly comes to a close. We have explored their gentle beginnings, their quiet strength in managing households, their vital contributions to labor and trade, their deep faith, and their quiet influence on their communities. You've listened to the peaceful unfolding of history, not to remember every detail, but to simply let the soothing rhythm of the story guide you into a deeper state of relaxation. As the last lingering thoughts of these distant lives softly fade, allow your mind to fully unwind. Feel the comfort of your bed beneath you, the gentle rise and fall of your breath. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to think about. Just peace and quiet. May your sleep be deep, undisturbed, and filled with gentle dreams. Thank you for joining this quiet exploration of history. Until next time, sleep peacefully and rest deeply.